I read those words by lamplight after balancing my husband's unemployment checkbook. Our emphatic answer is no. I copied that line in my Bible margin. If the missionaries could hold the line overseas, then I could keep faith here. I felt proud that Methodist women were still doing things, even with no money. I'd lost my teaching post last year, but I still had my voice. Maybe that, too, was kind of a missionary service. He was right. Some Sundays the church furnace stayed cold because we couldn't buy coal, but his words, the missionary temperature, made me smile. I decided I'd warm it up with prayer and with soup for the neighbors.
In the first months of 1933, darkness seemed to deepen across the entire world. Markets collapsed, missions had faltered, and faith itself seemed very fragile. Yet the Methodist periodical, World Outlook, refused to wallow in despair. The general theme emerging from the winter of 1933 was that mission work could still continue through divine providence, even amid financial collapse. The Great Depression was covered by the periodical as an opportunity for spiritual growth and endurance, encouraging the readers to be hopeful in hardship. Faith, they wrote, could be lived out as courage, stewardship, and through communal care, and above all, with moral steadiness and endurance. Through February, the tone of the magazine turned towards cooperation. Faith was no longer thought of as an individual survival, but shared endurance. The editors of 1933 called this a good adventure in cooperation, and Jessie Daniel Ames told of women crossing county lines and racial boundaries to rebuild a neglected school. But by March, the Great Depression had worsened, and the impact was felt by a very large percentage of the population. Pastors urged trust in God's bank, emphasizing stewardship, cooperation, and faith as resistance to despair. The Depression was reinterpreted as a spiritual crucible and suffering as the soil of renewal. The church must keep faith active through service and generosity. And then the tone of the periodical deepened into more of a spiritual reflection. In their kitchens and classrooms, on mission fields and factory floors, Methodist women read these pages and believed them. The periodical kept the readers looking for purpose even when experiencing tremendous loss. The readers were encouraged to resist despair by faithful endurance. They learned, as the periodical taught, that even in a collapsing world, faith holds. The spring of 1933 found the Methodist world pretty weary, but still unbroken. Across its April to June issues, World Outlook portrayed a church that shared the world's suffering while refusing to yield to despair. Reports from Japan, Korea, China, and Latin America showed faith's durability under hardship. Missionary hospitals and schools became symbols of hope. Rural circuit riders, settlement houses, and unemployed cooperatives are spotlighted as expressions of social holiness. The periodical portrays economic crisis as an opportunity to rebuild national conscience, and in such a way that gratitude and endurance define holiness. World Outlook is complicit in courageous realism. The church is small but luminous, carrying the torch of hope. Editor Cram opened the April issue by writing, "The world is weary. Its old pleasures and pastimes have left it jaded. What a day for the real Christian! I cannot drink of him and let my brother go in thirst." Through May and June, the magazine maintained its focus on compassion and courage. From Methodist hospitals in Asia to relief work in America's coal towns, readers were reminded that the Christian life was not security, but service. And in June, Stanley Jones' travels were featured with this warning: "There is a race on between communism and Christianity in the Far East, with communism only slightly in the lead." The editorial response was clear. Christian faith must match the world's courage with moral steadiness and hope. The periodical emphasized that faithful Methodists shared in the suffering and that they could hold on to hope by courageous practices such as fasting and cooperation. The readers learned again that compassion itself is endurance. By midsummer 1933, the church was learning how to keep steady hands amid economic freefall and moral cross-currents. The World Outlook asked, "What does faith sound like when fear is loud?"
For me, it sounded like plain courage. No fuss, just carrying on.
At the Board of Missions, Dr. Cram named the crisis without panic and then set the tone for perseverance. July editors turned directly to America's racial conscience. Reporting on the Stanley Jones meetings across southern cities, they recorded an unmistakable public step.
I felt heat rise in my face reading that. If not Christian, then we have work to do in our pews as much as is in our missions.
Another July feature celebrated Indigenous leadership. Korean pastors began to take full responsibility for word and sacrament.
That lifted me. The church isn't a Western export. It's growing its own roots.
August offered a quieter but no less revolutionary form of faith. The focus was on education that is needed in the formation of conscience. Annie Bell Williams profiled Japanese Christian educator Mikai Kawai and her vision to bridge city and countryside. Her aim was relentlessly practical.
Practical life. I underlined that twice. Holiness with rubber boots on.
So the summer theme moved from faith versus fear to building the kingdom quietly. Mission boards held steady and interracial fellowship nudged forwards. Stories from Japan and Korea celebrate self-supporting congregations and women's leadership as Korean pastors led their own churches. And Miki Kawai trained young women for work, worship, and the common good. By the end of the summer, the overarching themes in World Outlook were partnership, education, and steadfast vocation. World Outlook emphasized integrity in public, education in depth, and social witness with their sleeves rolled up. This was how World Outlook taught faith to beat fear in 1933. Faith was to be expressed in daily work, service, and gratitude. By the fall of 1933, the world was still staggering under the weight of the Depression. But in the September-October issue of World Outlook, the conversation shifted from survival to reconstruction. The editors called for a rebuilding of morale and spiritual foundations that had cracked beneath the strain. Editor Rawlings, in his essay, "Is It Too Strongly Stated?" reminded readers that the church's strength was not in retreat or nostalgia, but in renewal. The same issue carried a voice from Augusta, Georgia, Channing Tobias, writing the article "Eyes Fixed Forward on a Star." His focus was cooperation across race and class. To quote, "We're not nearest the solution of difficult problems like that of race when we have thought them out logically or argued them heatedly, but only when the groups concerned have joined hands in a common task. As the work goes on, understanding follows." Then comes Frances Perkins, the U.S. Secretary of Labor, connecting Christian faith to public policy in the article "Lifting the Depression."
That line, "To that they are entitled," stayed with me. Entitled. Not as a favor, but as fairness. Maybe righteousness sounds a lot like justice after all.
James Myers, in The Church's Business, began with the story of a miner's widow, a quiet indictment of economic cruelty, and concluded that the church must not shrink from the labor problem. It's the very testing ground of the gospel. the issue ended with the reminder that peace itself requires discipline. Peace action is the issue, year in and year out, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
It made me think. Peace isn't a mood, it's a practice. Maybe that's what faith is too, something you keep at, even when the world forgets.
As harvests failed and governments faltered, World Outlook called the church to live as if the kingdom were already breaking in, quietly, persistently in the work of reconciliation. In that call, a weary reader found courage once more. As the autumn of 1933 passed, the periodical had focused on a season of rebuilding faith and conscience. Peace was considered to be a continuous discipline of faith. From the editor's desk to the mission fields, from coal towns to classrooms, Methodists were discovering that justice could be sanctification, cooperation could be holiness, and peace was not the end of faith, but its daily work. Incarnational hope, gratitude, and peace on earth were the main themes for the Advent season in the World Outlook. Despite a year that struggled under the weight of depression and weariness, the final pages of the periodical still managed to divert the reader's attention towards the endurance of the church over the year, a church whose gratitude was born in hardship. The reader would be comforted over and over by love refusing to despair.
I remember reading those issues by the fire, the chill in the house sharper than the wind outside. But the stories were warm, stubbornly so. They made me think faith might really outlast the cold. A hospital that heals in a world that wounds. I whispered it aloud. That's what faith should look like, doors that never shut.
When December arrived, World Outlook turned from gratitude to thanksgiving and incarnation. And on the final page of the 1933 volume, poet Russell Bowie gave the church its Advent benediction. He comes again, the child from God, to find his Bethlehem. Far, far away is Bethlehem, and years are long and dim since Mary held the Holy Child, and angels sang to him. But still to hearts where love and faith make room for Christ in them, he comes again, the child from God, to find his Bethlehem.